The rain wasn't soft. It wasn't the kind that whispered against glass or faded politely into the night. It came down hard, sharp, relentless, like it had something to prove. Each drop hit the pavement outside Lena Park's apartment with a hollow, metallic rhythm, echoing through the narrow alley below her window. The neon sign from the liquor store across the street flickered through the rain, casting broken streaks of red and blue across her peeling walls. Lena barely noticed it. Her fingers were raw, the skin along her knuckles cracked from chemicals and cold water. The smell of disinfectant clung to her clothes, soaked into the fibers like something permanent. 10 hours. That's how long she had spent on her feet, moving through a building that didn't know she existed. Scrubbing glass walls she could never afford to touch outside of work. Emptying bins filled with things people threw away without thinking. Wiping fingerprints off doors that opened to lives she would never live. She worked at Helix Tower. 48 floors of steel, glass, and quiet power. A place where the lights never really turned off, just dimmed slightly as the city pretended to sleep. Lena knew the building better than most of the people who owned it. Not by names. By patterns. The programmer on the 32nd floor who always left his screen unlocked. The executive assistant who cried in the bathroom at exactly 6:15 every evening. The security guard who dozed between camera checks at 3 a.m. And him. Ethan Cade. She had never spoken to him. Never even come close. People like her didn't exist in his world. But she had seen him, once, maybe twice, moving through the building like everything around him was already under control. He didn't rush. He didn't look around. The space adjusted to him. Conversation stopped when he passed. Even the air felt different, sharper, like it was paying attention. He was the kind of man people built systems for. The kind who didn't follow rules, he wrote them. That was before. Tonight, something was wrong. She noticed it the moment she stepped into the executive floor. The silence was different. Not the usual late-night quiet. This felt empty. Abandoned. The lights were still on, but there was no movement behind the glass walls. No hum of conversations. No tapping of keyboards. Just stillness. Her cartwheels squeaked softly as she pushed it down the hallway, the sound too loud in the absence of everything else. Then she saw it. The main office. Ethan Cade's office. The door was open. It was never open. Lena slowed, her grip tightening on the handle of her cart. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Not fear. Not yet. Something sharper. Awareness. She told herself to keep walking. This wasn't her business. It never was. She didn't. Instead, she stepped closer. Quietly. Carefully. Like the building itself might notice. The lights inside were dim. One of the desk lamps was on, casting a low, ember glow across the room. The massive glass windows behind the desk reflected the storm outside, streaks of rain distorting the skyline into something unrecognizable. At first, she thought the room was empty. Then she heard it. A sound. Not loud. Not clear. Just enough to make her stop breathing. A shift. From behind the desk. Her heart began to pound, slow and heavy, like it was trying to warn her. She shouldn't be here. She knew that. But something pulled her forward anyway. One step. Then another. Until she could see. Him. Ethan Cade. Not standing. Not commanding. Not untouchable. He was on the floor. Back pressed against the side of his own desk. Shirt wrinkled. Tie gone. Hair disheveled like someone had run their hands through it too many times. There was a laptop open beside him, its screen glowing faintly, lines of code frozen mid-command. He looked up. And for a split second. There was something in his eyes that didn't belong to a man like him. Not control. Not power. Something raw. Something close to panic. Then it disappeared. Just like that. Replaced by something cold. Calculating. He saw her. Really saw her. And the silence between them snapped tight. "What did you see?" he asked. His voice was low. Controlled. Dangerous. Lena didn't answer. Because in that moment, standing in the doorway with rain hammering against the glass and a fallen billionaire watching her like she was either a threat, or the only option he had left, she realized something she couldn't take back. He wasn't supposed to be here. And whatever had happened to him wasn't over. Not even close. For a moment, Lena couldn't move. The question hung in the air, sharp, precise, dangerous. "What did you see?" It wasn't curiosity. It was calculation. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, to the laptop beside him. Lines of code frozen mid-process. A blinking cursor. Waiting. Whatever he had been doing, it wasn't finished. "I didn't see anything," she said quietly. A lie. A weak one. His gaze didn't shift. Didn't soften. It weighed her, measured her, stripped the words down to what they were worth. Nothing. Outside, thunder cracked, the sound rolling through the glass walls of the tower like a warning. Then his screen flickered. Both of them looked. The code vanished. Replaced by a single message. Access revoked. A beat. Then another line. All accounts frozen. Lena felt it before she understood it. The shift. The invisible collapse of something massive, something she couldn't see but could feel in the way the air changed. Ethan didn't react. Not immediately. But his hand, resting beside him on the floor, tightened slightly. Just enough to notice. Then his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Again. He didn't reach for it. Lena did. She didn't even realize she had moved until it was already in her hand, the screen lighting up her face. News alert. Another. Another. She stared. Helix CEO Ethan Cade implicated in global cyber attack. Federal authorities issue immediate warrant. Assets seized. Company under emergency control. Her breath caught. Slowly, she turned the phone toward him. He didn't need to look. He already knew. The empire she had only ever seen from a distance, the power that filled entire floors of this building. Gone. Just like that. Not tomorrow. Not gradually. Now. A complete erasure. Silence pressed in around them. Heavy. Unforgiving. Then, finally, he let out a breath. Low. Controlled. But there was something underneath it now. Something cracked. "They moved faster than I thought," he said. Not fear. Not surprise. Something worse. Acceptance. Lena stared at him. This man, who owned everything, was sitting on the floor of his own office. With nothing. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than before. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Lena could feel it pressing against her chest, tightening with every second she stood there. The rain battered harder against the windows, like the world outside was trying to force its way in, demanding movement, demanding a choice. She shouldn't be here. That thought came first. Clear. Logical. Safe. This wasn't her world. Men like Ethan Cade didn't fall without taking everything around them down with them. Whatever had just happened, whatever storm had wiped him out in seconds, it wasn't over. It was only beginning. And she was standing in the middle of it. Leave. The word cut through the room. She looked at him. He hadn't moved. Still on the floor. Still watching her. But his expression had changed. Not softer. Not weaker. Colder. More distant. Like he had already made his decision. You didn't see me, he continued, voice even. Controlled. You were never here. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an exit. A clean one. All she had to do was take it. Walk out. Close the door. Go back to her cart, her routine, her invisible life. By morning, this would be someone else's problem. Something on the news. Something far away from her. Safe. Predictable. Untouched. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone still in her hand. She should go. She knew she should. Instead, her eyes drifted, not to him, but to the screen of his laptop. Blank now. Locked out. Dead. Then back to him. To the man who once controlled everything in this building, now sitting on the floor like he didn't even belong in it anymore. Alone. Something shifted inside her. Quiet. Stubborn. Dangerous. You can't stay here, she said. The words came out before she could stop them. His gaze sharpened instantly. That's not your concern. No, she said, her voice steadier now. It's not. A beat. Then. They're going to come for you. That landed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But it landed. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not panic. Awareness. She took a breath, the weight of what she was about to say settling deep in her chest. She shouldn't do this. She knew that. She did it anyway. I have a place, she said. Silence. Absolute. It's small, she added, quieter now. And it's not, this. Her grip tightened on the edge of the desk. But they won't look for you there. His eyes locked onto hers. Searching. Calculating. Suspicious. Why? He asked. One word. Heavy. Loaded with a lifetime of distrust. Lena hesitated. Because she didn't have a good answer. Because nothing about this made sense. Because this was the kind of decision that ruined lives. She swallowed. Then told the truth. Because no one should lose everything in one night. Another silence. Longer this time. Deeper. The storm outside roared. Inside. The world held its breath. Ethan Cade studied her like she was a variable he couldn't solve. A risk. Or an opportunity. Then, slowly. He stood. And that was the moment everything changed. The walk to Lena's apartment felt longer than it was. Neither of them spoke. The city moved around them, cars slicing through wet streets, neon lights reflecting off puddles, people rushing past with their heads down, unaware of the shift happening just a few feet away from them. Ethan walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, but close enough that she could feel his presence without looking. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It pressed against her. Heavy. Controlled. Watchful. Her building didn't belong in his world. The paint on the walls outside was peeling. The stairwell smelled faintly of damp concrete and old cooking oil. The overhead light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Lena fumbled with her keys. For the first time since she'd made the decision, her hands felt unsteady. Behind her, Ethan said nothing. But she could feel it. He was observing everything. Every detail. Every weakness. The lock clicked. She pushed the door open and stepped inside first, reaching for the switch. A soft yellow light filled the room. Small. That was the first thing anyone noticed. A narrow space with a worn couch, a tiny table, and a kitchenette tucked into the corner. Everything had its place. Everything had been earned. Ethan stepped in after her. And suddenly, the room felt smaller. He closed the door behind him, the sound sharp in the quiet. For a moment, he didn't move. He just stood there, taking it in. The walls. The furniture. The life. His life had been measured in millions, in data centers, in global reach. This was measured in survival. Lena set her bag down, trying to ignore the tension tightening in her chest. "You can take the couch," she said. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved. Slow. Precise. He walked further into the room, his gaze sweeping across everything like he was mapping it, memorizing it. Calculating. Always calculating. Then he stopped. Turned. Looked at her. Up close, there was no distance now. No glass walls. No security barriers. Just him. And her. "You shouldn't have done this," he said quietly. Not anger. Not gratitude. Something in between. Lena folded her arms slightly, grounding herself. "I know." A beat. The rain tapped softly against the window now, less violent, but still present. Like a reminder. Ethan's gaze didn't leave her. "People who get close to me," he said, voice low, steady, "don't stay untouched." The warning sat between them. Clear. Undeniable. Lena felt it. The weight of it. The truth of it. She should have stepped back. Created distance. Protected herself. She didn't. Instead, she met his gaze. Held it. And said, quietly. "Then don't let anything happen to me." Something shifted. Small. But real. And in that moment, the tension between them stopped being just danger. And became something far more complicated. The car didn't belong there. Lena noticed it the next morning. It was too clean. Too still. Parked across the street like it had nowhere else to be, but everything about it said otherwise. Blacked out windows. Engine off. No movement inside. Watching. She stood by the window, fingers lightly gripping the edge of the curtain. "Do you know them?" Ethan's voice came from behind her. Calm. Too calm. She didn't turn. No. A pause. Then. "You should step away from the window." That made her move. Not fast. Not panicked. But enough. She let the curtain fall back into place and turned to face him. He was already dressed. Not in a suit. Not in anything that screamed power. But somehow, he still carried it. Just quieter now. Sharper. More dangerous. "They found you?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked briefly toward the window, then back to her. "They didn't lose me," he said. "A difference. A big one." Before she could respond, a knock hit the door. Hard. Not polite. Not uncertain. Final. Lena froze. The air shifted instantly. Heavy. Pressurized. Like the room had just shrunk around them. Another knock. Louder. "Open up." Male voice. Firm. Impatient. Her heartbeat started to climb. Fast. Unsteady. She looked at Ethan. He was already moving. Silent. Efficient. In 2 steps, he was beside her. Close enough that she felt the heat of him, the steadiness of his presence cutting through her rising panic. "Listen carefully," he said, low and controlled. "You open the door. You say you're alone. Her throat tightened. And you? I won't be seen. That didn't make sense. But something in his tone said not to question it. Another knock. Harder. Now. He guided her, just a slight pressure at her arm, toward the door, then stepped away, disappearing into the blind spot behind it. Out of sight. But not gone. Never gone. Lena took a breath. Then another. Her hand wrapped around the handle. She shouldn't be doing this. She knew that. This was the moment where everything could fall apart. Or lock into something she couldn't escape. The knocking stopped. Silence. Waiting. She opened the door. Two men stood there. Sharp suits. Hard eyes. The kind of presence that didn't ask questions, it took answers. One of them held up a phone. A photo. Ethan. Have you seen this man? Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. Behind the door. She could feel him. Still. Watching. Waiting. And for the first time. She understood. This wasn't just his problem anymore. It was hers. Lena forced her face into something neutral. Blank. Unremarkable. Invisible. The way she had trained herself to be. I don't know him, she said. Her voice didn't shake. The man in front studied her for a second too long. His eyes moved past her, scanning the room behind her shoulder. Measuring space. Looking for movement. Lena didn't turn. Didn't give him anything. A beat. Then. Mind if we take a look? Her grip tightened slightly on the door. Yes, she said. Too quickly. His expression shifted. Suspicion. The second man stepped forward, placing a hand against the door. Step aside. Not a request. Pressure pushed inward. Lena's heart spiked. This was it. If they walked in. It was over. For both of them. She opened her mouth. And then it happened. A blur of movement. Fast. Silent. Violent. The man at the door didn't even have time to react. Ethan moved from the blind spot like he'd been waiting for this exact second. One step. One strike. The edge of his hand slammed into the man's throat. A choked sound. Air cut off. He folded instantly. Ethan caught him before he hit the ground, dragging him inward, out of sight. The second man barely had time to process. His hand went for his jacket. Too slow. Ethan was already on him. A sharp pivot. A controlled hit to the ribs. Another to the jaw. Precise. Efficient. No wasted movement. The man staggered, breath knocked out of him, eyes wide with shock. Ethan closed the distance. Finished it. A final strike. The body dropped. Silence. Heavy. Sudden. Lena couldn't breathe. It had taken seconds. That was all. The room felt different now. Charged. Alive with something dangerous. Ethan stood over them, chest rising slowly, not rushed. Not shaken. Like this level of violence, was familiar. Controlled. Natural. He reached down, checking quickly. Searching pockets. Pulling out a phone. A weapon. Routine. Like he'd done this before. Many times. Then he straightened. Turned. Looked at her. For a moment. Nothing. No emotion. Just calculation. Then, just slightly. It shifted. Softened. Barely. We're out of time, he said. Calm. Certain. Final. Lena swallowed, her pulse still racing, her world still spinning. She had seen it now. The truth. He wasn't just a man who had lost everything. He was the kind of man who could take it back. And suddenly, helping him didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like stepping into something she might never escape. They left within minutes. No bags. No hesitation. Ethan moved first, pulling Lena with him, not roughly, but with purpose. Every step calculated, every turn deliberate. The hallway felt tighter now, the walls closer, like the building itself knew what had just happened. They didn't use the front exit. They slipped down the back stairs, the air thick with dust and silence. Lena's heartbeat hadn't slowed. It followed her, loud and relentless, echoing in her ears with every step. Outside, the rain had softened into a steady drizzle. The city looked the same. But nothing was. "Where are we going?" she asked, breath uneven. Ethan didn't slow. "Somewhere temporary." That wasn't an answer. But it was all she got. They moved fast, cutting through side streets, avoiding crowds, staying in motion. Lena noticed the way he scanned everything, windows, reflections, shadows. Always 2 steps ahead. Always aware. This wasn't panic. This was training. They reached an underpass several blocks away. Ethan finally stopped, turning toward her. For the first time since they left. He actually looked at her. Not as a variable. Not as a risk. As something else. "You memorized the building," he said. It wasn't a question. Lena blinked. "What?" "Helix," he continued. "You know the routines. The blind spots. Security patterns." She hesitated. Then nodded. "I clean it every night." A beat. Something shifted behind his eyes. Interest. Recognition. "You're not just invisible," he said quietly. It wasn't praise. It was realization. Lena crossed her arms slightly, grounding herself. "I see things people ignore." That landed. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They didn't just take my company," he said. "They locked me out of it." His jaw tightened. "There's something inside Helix they don't want anyone to find." Lena frowned. "What?" "A kill switch," he said. "Proof. Evidence that exposes everything Marcus did." Silence. Rain dripping steadily around them. Lena's mind raced. Helix. The building. The system. She knew it. Better than most. She looked at him. Really looked this time. "You can't get back in," she said. He didn't deny it. She exhaled slowly. Then. "I can." Another silence. Heavy. Different. This wasn't fear. This was a shift. A line being crossed. Ethan studied her, something sharp and dangerous forming behind his gaze. "You understand what you're offering?" "Yes." No hesitation. No retreat. Because now. She wasn't just helping him survive. She was stepping into the fight. And for the first time. They weren't alone anymore. They were aligned. Helix Tower hadn't changed. It still rose into the sky like it owned the city. Glass. Steel. Control. But tonight. It felt different. Hostile. The silence after the shot felt unreal. For a moment, the entire city seemed to pause with it. Below them, traffic still moved. Lights still flickered across buildings. Life continued, unaware that something powerful had just shifted back into place. Inside the penthouse. It was over. Lena's hands rested lightly on the edge of the desk, her breath still uneven, her pulse slowly finding its way back down. The screen in front of her continued to stream data, files, transactions, proof. Everything Marcus had tried to bury was now exposed. There was no coming back from that. For him. For any of them. Behind her, Ethan didn't move immediately. He stood there for a second longer, looking at Marcus's body on the floor. Not with anger. Not even satisfaction. Just closure. Then he turned. And walked back to her. Slow. Measured. The same way he had moved when she first saw him, before everything fell apart. Only now. There was nothing fragile left in him. Lena felt it before she looked up. That shift. The return of something controlled. Dominant. Unshakable. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that the distance between them disappeared again. You should leave, he said. The words were calm. But they weren't a dismissal. They were a test. Lena held his gaze. If I leave, she said quietly, this follows me anyway. Her face had been on the news. Her life had already been pulled into this. There was no going back. A beat. Then. I'm already in it. Something in his expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. He reached out, his hand brushing lightly against her wrist, grounding, deliberate. You had a choice, he said. I made it. No hesitation. No regret. The city lights reflected in his eyes as he studied her, weighing something deeper now. Not risk. Value. Trust. Then his hand shifted, sliding from her wrist to her waist again. Steady. Claiming. Not forceful. Certain. They tried to take everything from me, he said, voice low, controlled. My company. My name. My future. His gaze didn't leave hers. They failed. A pause. Then. They made one mistake. Lena felt her breath catch slightly. He stepped closer. Just enough. They thought you were a liability. His hand tightened slightly. Protective. Final. They didn't understand. The words settled between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. You're not something I lose. Not a question. Not a promise. A statement. Lena didn't pull away. Didn't resist. Because somewhere along the way, that line had already been crossed. Outside, the city stretched endlessly. Cold. Bright. Unforgiving. But inside, for the first time, she wasn't invisible anymore. And she wasn't alone. Lena moved through the service corridor in her old uniform, the fabric familiar against her skin, but everything else felt wrong. Her pulse was steady, but loud. Every step echoed sharper than it used to. Every shadow felt deeper. Behind her, Ethan followed. Silent. Focused. No hesitation left in him now. They reached the service elevator. Lena pulled the keycard from her pocket. A single swipe. A pause. Then. Green light. The doors slid open. Inside, the hum of machinery filled the tight space. Lena stepped in first. Ethan after. The doors closed, sealing them inside. Up. Floor by floor. Closer. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The plan was simple. Get in. Retrieve the data. Get out. But simple didn't mean safe. The elevator stopped. Top floor. The doors opened. Silence. Too quiet. Lena stepped out slowly, her eyes scanning the space she once cleaned without a second thought. Now it felt like enemy ground. Ethan moved past her, heading straight for the main office. His office. He didn't hesitate. He pushed the door open. Inside. Everything was exactly where it used to be. Except. Someone was already there. Marcus Vale. Standing near the glass window, hands behind his back like he'd been waiting. Because he had. A slow smile spread across his face. I was wondering when you'd come back. Ethan didn't react. Didn't stop. Just stepped fully into the room. You always were predictable, Marcus continued, calm, confident. But bringing her. His eyes flicked to Lena. Amused. That's new. Lena felt it. The trap. Too clean. Too easy. Before she could react. Movement. Two guards stepped out from the side shadows. Guns raised. Locked. Ethan stopped. Just for a second. Then. He moved. Fast. Explosive. The first guard barely lifted his weapon before Ethan closed the distance. A sharp strike. A twist. The gun clattered across the floor. The second fired. Glass shattered. Noise erupted. Lena dropped behind the desk, heart slamming as chaos exploded around her. Ethan moved like force, not flesh. Precise. Relentless. Every motion controlled. Within seconds. Silence returned. The guards were down. Marcus wasn't smiling anymore. Now. It was just them. Two men. One empire. One ending. You lost, Marcus said, quieter now. Tense. Ethan tilted his head slightly. No, he replied. Then, without looking. Lena. She understood. Instantly. She moved to the terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. Fast. Focused. The system resisted. Then broke. Access granted. The truth flooded the screen. Marcus froze. Ethan stepped closer. Slow. Final. They thought you were my weakness, he said, voice low, controlled. His eyes shifted, just briefly, to Lena. Then back. They were wrong. One move. One shot. Marcus dropped. Silence. Heavy. Over. Ethan turned. Walked back to her. Not rushed. Not uncertain. He stopped in front of Lena, looking down at her, not as the cleaner. Not as invisible. As something else entirely. Something chosen. This started because you saw me, he said quietly. His hand settled lightly at her waist. Firm. Certain. And now. A pause. The city glowing behind them. You're the reason I don't lose again. Lena didn't step back. Didn't look away. Because somewhere between the fall and the fight, she had stopped being just a witness. And become part of his world. For good. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss a story and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening.